Hey there, and welcome back. We're going to do another series. This one is going to be quite helpful because we're in the planning stage of our season, and we're going to start talking about, as a coach, your vision and your philosophy and how that shapes your season planning. Um, we'll look at the periodization and then your, strategies and tactics um, and just how like I said, how your overall vision. That's the core tenet, and that's what you keep coming back to. From that, in the following week, we're going to talk about player positional profiles and the development of players, understanding the roles of the positions and the relationships between these positions and players, which I think is something that's not really discussed too often. We will look at planning a practice session, understanding the flow of the session, how to build up the intensity to avoid injuries, to get the most out of your time on the pitch. And we'll finish off with some, games-based versus drill-based and designing activities. And I've talked about this previously. It's the benefits of game-based exercises, how to create games-based off of outcomes, and how not just to use the same drills all the time, which I think it's going to be quite fascinating. The goal for that one is to try and get creative. And yes, there are lots of great things on YouTube and the internet, but as coaches, it all comes back to our vision and our philosophy. So when we have the tools and we're able to create drills and games and exercises based around what our philosophy is or our vision, then we can actually be truly effective. Um, and you have to think about, like, there may be ways that teams play that you watch that you like. There might be some things on the internet you see. You might read some articles. You're like, oh, that might work. This shape or that shape could work. But if it's not really your own, then you're not going to be that passionate about it. And if it's not your own, then it's not going to be as effective. So that's the goal, is to get each and every single one of us to really maximize the ability and the knowledge that we have inside of ourselves. To take that vision, to take something that you like on the television or that you saw in a game, and just sprinkle that little bit of razzle dazzle on it. We want to just put our own little touch on everything, and then because of that, it becomes more authentic, and the players believe you and they buy in more often when you are trying to coach it, or when you are talking about it, because it's yours. And when it's yours, you're more passionate about it. When you're more passionate about it, it's coached in a better manner. So that's the plan. Again, this first episode, we'll talk about the vision and philosophy and seasonal planning.
A few moments later.
Welcome back inside. The neighbor dog was going a bit crazy, so we'll get started from here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, you as a coach, is what's your philosophy for the game, and how do you see it being played. There are many different ways to play this game, and your philosophy, it has to be simple, it has to be clear and concise, and ideally it has to be able to be written down in 5 or 6 words, no more than that. Talk about myself. Mine is violent precision. That's my whole philosophy about the game. And so, for instance, let's say you're in a car wreck. Someone asks how it was. You said, "Oh, it was a high-speed wreck." That's understandable. If they ask you what it was, and you said it was a violent collision, now you can actually get a better understanding. You can hear it, you can feel it, and that's what we want to do. So everything we do, in my philosophy, is done at speed, at very violent speed. So we hit gaps, we hit rocks, we pass quite well. It's all about speed. And then the precision part comes into our planning, our preparation, our accuracy. Everything is precise. So we're very precise in everything we do, and we do it at violent speeds. So that's where the philosophy is, and that has kind of shaped some of our attack structures, definitely the defense structures. And I find it's an easy thing to keep coming back to. So when we're considering new tactics, does this fit? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But from your philosophy, then the next thing you have to do is you have to have a vision. So what's your vision? What will you define as success? What are you selling to the team? Because that's what we are. We're salespeople. You have your philosophy, but what's the vision? Like, is it we are going to have the best season of your lives? Or is it we're going to go try win the championship? We're going to beat a rival team, or we're going to grow and develop? It's your vision, and you as your vision, what is the vision for the team? You have to know that. Every single year it's going to change. There can be an overarching vision, let's say a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, but at the end of the season, there's no better feeling than when the players have come up to you and they thanked you as a coach, said, hey, that was the best experience I had in a single season. So those are two things to consider. It's your philosophy and then the vision and how you sell it. So before we get into the game planning, I want you just take a moment and you can doodle, or if you have any ideas, just write them down and we can start to expand on those.
12 seconds later.
So when you have your vision, your philosophy nailed down, the next thing you want to do when you're looking at your team is prognosis and diagnosis. Sometimes they get mixed up or they're thought of as the same thing, but you can see here there's some clear differences. With the prognosis, we're talking about what we want, what we want from our players in certain positions, what athletic ability would we like to see, what are our projections, what are we possibly able to do, versus the diagnosis is what we have. What players we have, what technical abilities or tactical knowledge do we have, also the kind of our limitations. We can't all have a perfect team, so you want to just do prognosis and diagnosis. It's an easy enough thing to do. Basically just take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and write out the different things on either sides, and then see what correlates, see what matches up, and then what doesn't, and then it'll help you get a better understanding of how that ties into your vision and your philosophy, because everything comes back to your philosophy.
3 weeks later.
So hopefully that didn't take 3 weeks. Should be done a little bit less than that. So when you have that done, the next thing you want to look at is your team profile. And what I mean by team profile is, your strengths and weaknesses, the analysis of your players available for selection. How many back rows do you have? How many number 9s? How many number 10s do you have? Are your centers more kind of fast twitch and elusive, or are they bigger bodies? And it's what we want to do is just start looking at the team and the strengths and weaknesses. Try and put players together, try and put combinations together. And when you're doing this, when you're heading into practice, have it in your mind that, let's say for instance you have a new 12 and 13 that you want to play together. Well, try and always make sure they're on the same team when you're doing mini games or playing touch, or even just some basic exercises, so then they can start to develop those habits. And it's like every team or squad, we all have different attributes and we all contribute differently. And here's a couple of examples. So yeah, you have your team profile done, and now we can actually get to the interesting part. So it's not just about categorizing the players, but it's also about finding what you think you have and what works. So looking at how many creative players do I have, how many players can play flat at the line or need to be deeper. Those kind of like finishers. Who are your bigger athletes? Your ruck chasers, your support players. And this is something we're going to talk about in the second episode, about breaking down the different positions. But start to come up with a standard categorization, be it like creativity, finisher, ball carrier, these kind of things. Just start kind of piecing the teams into the roles, because not every position will be the same. A number 6 and a number 7 are quite different, but again, we'll talk about that next time. So you just need to find out who are your creative playmakers, and who's going to finish, and then everything in between. So now that we have the team profile done and the prognosis, diagnosis, and all our vision and our philosophy, what we do is or the best way I can describe it is that we combine all of these 5 things together. Imagine that they are in a hourglass timer. So everything is combined and mixed. You can shake it up a little bit. The sand is all kind of stuck there. Depending on the amount of time that you have with your team, that's the width of the filter. That is, and how quickly it's all going to disseminate down. From that, it's all going to flow into our seasonal game plan. From our seasonal game plan, we get our patterns of play, then we get strategy, then we get tactics. Because every one of those things is influenced by our vision and then our team profile, for instance. So you have to think about that. Like the more effective you are at training, it's all going to come out in grains of sand. The more time you have, the quicker will flow, and then the more information will go get out, and then the easier it will be for the team to be on the same page. And then who knows, maybe you go off and win a World Cup. It could be that simple. So, as I mentioned about the seasonal plan and what we're trying to achieve, how your vision and your philosophy impacts that is quite important. If your philosophy is you want to play like downhill rugby, more of a forwards game, that's what you like to do versus a backs thing, you can see some examples here. If you're looking to stretch the field, well then you're going to need to work on your wider passing, you're going to need to work on more elusive running, probably some attacking kicks. Um, versus the downhill rugby is, you're going to work on your point of contact skills. You're going to work on latching, on securing breakdowns, on getting that separation and pulling in like 2 to 3 defenders per carry. So you can start to see now how, like, sometimes we want to practice everything, and we try and cover all of the bases, but we're not really experts in anything. And to be a truly great team, you have to be great at something. So what is your philosophy? What are the strengths of your team? And how can you tailor your game plan? And then your patterns of play will be impacted on how you coach and how you practice. For example, we're just going to look at a wider attack uh, philosophy. So you're going to need an awful lot of work on passing and footwork and evasion. So you're going to have to factor in a lot of time in your early sessions for 10 to 15 meter passes, also overs and unders lines. So you're going to want to have to be leading the attackers away from the defenders. So if you put the ball across their face and then they can catch it and they're naturally away from the defender, you're going to need to work on your realignment and your depth, because we can't really attack wide unless we have some depth. If we're too flat, then we're just going to get tackled. And then again, if you have these created players, the Euro Wizard Harry types, then we can start to bring in attacking kicking, from grubber kicks and crossfield kicks and chip over the tops. So that's the wide strategy, and how you tailor your sessions will dictate how good you get at that. There's yes, we all need point of contact work, but if your philosophy is to avoid contact, well, then it shouldn't be a large proportion of what you're doing. Um, so your seasonal plans will then have these passing drills and or passing games. For instance, if you do want to play touch, and we're going to talk about this later, games versus drills. So you're going to have to work really hard on your passing, and when you do, other aspects of the game will come into play. You can have your patterns of play. What kind of do you, from the set piece, do you go attack wide straight away, or do you have like a starter play in the middle and set in the middle, and then go, 1 or 2 phases around the corner, or do you snap back down the blind side? This all comes down to your philosophy and then your skills.
A few moments later.
So hopefully you can see how at a training level session, how you structure it and what you do is influenced by your philosophy and your vision. And that's more on a micro level. Just on a macro level, I want to explain like the whole kind of periodization and seasonal idea and your game plan, and to come back to the hourglass with the sand. And a couple of years ago, I had this idea about how um, to simplify the game. And when you think about rugby being an invasion sport, there's only 4 elements of invasion sports. It's attack, defense, and then the transition from attack to defense and defense to attack. So I came up with this kind of like an X matrix, and those of you that in business will understand this. It's quite a simple concept, but I find it's really helpful in rugby. So you can see here I've typed one version up, and the idea is you just take a piece of paper, you draw your lines out to the corners, and then you detail out everything that you feel is needed from your calls, and it's more situational. So generally when we go from slow to fast ball, so the slower the ball, the more likelihood that you're going to have to transition to defense through a kick or a turnover or giving away a penalty. And then fastball on defense and your line speed on defense will equate to creating turnovers as well. So it's all goes like the speed cycle. And you can see here on the one that I the last one I had that I drew up, I think that was on like 9 A4 pages. And had all the calls, and then we had special calls, we had line out options, the ifs and buts. What happens if a line out is overthrown? These kind of things. And, it doesn't have to be as extensive, but I find this is a great way for you when you're going into your preseason and as a coach or as a coaching group, you're looking to do your planning, that when you come together, you map this out, and then when you can start to put down your the actual calls or the systems in place that you have. There's just a quick little tip. Um, always think about it as slow ball versus fast ball. So what do we want when we have slow ball, and then also what do we want when we have fast ball, and what are we trying to achieve? If you think about it in a simple way, or another simple philosophy is, if you can minimize your mistakes and maximize your opponent's mistakes, you'll generally win the game. So it's just a simplistic way of looking at it. So to finish up, I hope I was able to show you guys how that your coaches or your coaching philosophy, how you approach the game, dictates and influences everything that goes past it, everything that goes forward. So from your vision of what the season will be to how combined with your team profile, your prognosis, your diagnosis, how it all combines together like that. Sand, and that the amount of time that you have with your athletes or your players is the amount that it will filter through. We looked at some of the planning examples. We looked at how depending on how you want to play, you're going to have to structure your practice sessions differently. Um, Leading into like the X matrix and the look at the overall game, and then just some simplified aspects or hints and tips. Again, if there are any questions, um, more than happy to cover them. If you felt I didn't give anything enough attention or missed something, I'll just send a message and I'll answer as best I can. Leading into next week is really exciting for me because we're going to deal with player profiles and positional profiles and roles. So to give an example, if we look at the back row of a forward pack, we see 6, 7, and 8. We see two flankers and number 8, but we're going to actually discuss how not everyone with those positions has to play a certain role. If one person is better at one thing, they can be in a different position. But when you're looking at the balance of your back row and then the different roles within that, we're going to look at how best certain players complement each other. We're going to look at conflict management. And it'll be really fascinating and interesting things for this point in time, because this is a lot of the stuff that you want done before the season actually kicks off. So to give the players a better understanding and a better idea of what's going to be expected and what the standards will be. So that's next week. I hope you guys come back. I will try to have more irrelevant clips and pictures posted. So hopefully it keeps your attention and gets a laugh out of you.